Welcome to the SoccerWire podcast, the weekly show that focuses on the youth game and player development in the good old US of A. I'm here with the usual suspects, Quinn Casteel, Charles Boehm, and producer Bridget Baker. Today we'll continue our focus on college recruiting. With the advent of the U.S. Soccer Development Academy, more players are deciding to turn pro rather than play in college. How do college coaches factor that into their recruiting process, and what are the risks involved? It's November 20th, 2019, and the SoccerWire podcast is set for kickoff. We start today's show with SoccerWire Managing Editor Quinn Casteel, who is here to tell us about the stories he's chasing. And Quinn, your first one involves the U.S. men's national team, but for the first time in a long time, it's good news.
Yes, it is. The U.S. men's national team finished first place in their group in the CONCACAF Nations League, defeating Cuba 4-0 on Tuesday night down in the Cayman Islands. And this is just the U.S. taking care of business. Would have been a total disaster if they had lost this one. But they did take care of business down in the Cayman Islands. And really just watching this game, the main takeaway for me is I'm just glad nobody got hurt playing on the field with just divots all over the place. The field did not look like it was in good shape at all.
You've been CONCACAF'd.
Exactly. And the listed attendance was 1966. I don't think it was that many. It looked like we were watching a high school game. So just kind of crazy optics. But, you know, as Charles can say, this is run-of-the-mill for CONCACAF.
I think it's we have this incredible region that we're a part of, and the U.S. is contributes to what makes CONCACAF. So I want to say that from the jump. But there's not so little to compare to. It's such a tricky task for the U.S. men's national team at any point because you have to learn how to play a certain way in those situations like this week's game, and then you have to go and learn how to have a whole different toolkit when you go play the elite teams in the world. And I don't think they were perfect by any means. You check the box, you move on. It's almost a no-win situation, but it's just a little bit of a window into the unique challenges of this region.
And Quinn, though, I have to ask you, obviously we didn't learn anything about last night. We knew about the opponent. We knew about the kind of adversity that the team was going to face in terms of the field and the conditions and everything. But what did we learn about the U.S. and the win against Canada?
Well, I think there's a whole episode or two probably to unpack there. I think we're watching Greg Berhalter figure things out on the job, for better or worse. When the Federation made this choice, you have a coach in his first international job, and he has a way he wants to play. He has a philosophy, and he's also got to get results at times. And let's be honest, the demand from the general public was win this game or else, advance out of this Nations League group or else it's Katie bar the door. He did what was required to do that, and we move forward. But the best thing I can say about this international window for the men's national team is that they took care of business in order to get themselves some more games next year in the knockout stages.
And moving down a few levels, that's the CONCACAF Nations League. But in the college game, Quinn, it's all to play for as the tournaments are underway on the women's side and about to get started on the men's side.
Yes, we just had the first round of action in the women's NCAA tournament. A lot of chalk, as they say, in the first round. One upset that did take place was Central Connecticut State took down number 4 seed Rutgers. So congratulations to Central Connecticut State. On the men's side, the bracket was just revealed on Selection Monday this week. Number 1 seed awarded to the University of Virginia. So I'd keep an eye on them.
Well, shout out to my boys Syracuse, who are playing against Rhode Island tomorrow night. Moving on, and the U16 level, once again, some good news on the men's side.
Yes, the U.S. U16 boys national team won the Nike International Friendlies, which is interesting because in the same tournament, you had the U.S. U17 men's national team, but the U16 boys took the title against some pretty tough competition, including the Netherlands. And in that tournament, the U16 boys actually beat the U17 men's national team. And one standout player for the U16 boys was Moses Nyman, who is a recent homegrown signing for DC United. He's 15 years old, scored a couple of huge goals, and just played really well throughout the whole tournament.
Yeah, I think there's some faces to watch in this U16 crop. They were playing quality soccer. I mean, some of the goals that they carved out in this tournament were fun to watch. Some kids to watch for sure. I think it could be a fun crop.
And Moses Nyman, Quinn, how quickly do you expect him to feature for DC United? I feel like coming up, he's going to get a lot of time with Loudoun in the USL Championship.
Certainly. I mean, I think it's a lock that he'll see some time with Loudoun United, but he's really talented. He's 15, but Charles even said he got some time in preseason camp last year with DC United's first team. He seems like to me a candidate who I could see playing with the first team as early as next season, assuming his development continues at this rate.
And at the U.S. Soccer Club level, Quinn, we have the Capital Fall Classic coming up for the girls this weekend in Richmond, Virginia.
Oh, yeah, actually, the boys are coming up this weekend.
My apologies.
Oh, yeah. The girls just played down in Richmond for the Capital Fall Classic, which is run by the Richmond Strikers, part of the Richmond Strikers tournament series. And the Capital Fall Classic is the only tournament with qualifying divisions for the Jefferson Cup. The Jefferson Cup is one of the top, it's been at times the number one ranked tournament in the country, and they turn away hundreds of teams every year that apply. It's a very exclusive event. And so in the top divisions of the Capital Fall Classic, the champions get automatic qualification into the Jefferson Cup, played in March. So congratulations to all the teams that won. And then this weekend, we're going to have the boys qualifiers take place. 650 teams total competing in this year's Capital Fall Classic, which is a new record for that event.
I love that this tournament, there's something to play for other than just getting yourself noticed by maybe a college coach that happens to be there. Quinn Casteel, he's the managing editor at SoccerWire. Quinn, great stuff as always. Coming up next, more players are going pro. How has that affected the world of college recruiting? We'll take a look into a crazy world that is becoming even crazier after a brief word from Player Maker. The SoccerWire podcast is brought to you by Player Maker, the lightweight device worn by soccer players on each foot to record every touch of the ball and every step. Within minutes of training or games, players and coaches get a report on every touch, including left and right foot usage, possessions, passing, and dozens more. Player Maker is the most holistic player performance approach that's never been seen before. Visit SoccerWire.com/PlayerMaker to schedule a demo. Welcome back to the SoccerWire podcast. I'm Marc Serber here with Quinn Casteel, and joining us again is the smart, suave, and you can't see it, but handsome Charles Boehm. C4, how we doing today?
C4?
Yeah, because you're dynamite. But Charles, we heard at the beginning of the season about Maryland losing a couple of players who at the last minute decided to turn pro, leaving the Terrapins in a hole. But it hasn't just happened at Maryland. It's also happened at places like Wake Forest and UVA and other schools as well. How are college coaches reacting to the fact that if they take a blue chip prospect, he may be a one and done or could possibly even leave before setting a foot on campus?
Dear listeners, when you hear this noise, everyone in the studio is putting their hands on their foreheads because our minds are so blown by the incredible intros that Marc gives us here on the show. So thank you. Thank you for that, Marc. But to dive right into this conversation,
hey, you're my favorite person to mess with.
We got a lot to chop up here, guys. I'm staying on course. Yes, this is a fascinating situation here. We're witnessing kind of the pyramid is, I don't know, sharpening. Is that the right term? And there's this really interesting knock-on cascading effect that we're seeing. You could argue that maybe college soccer is finally starting to look more like college football and basketball, where there's players that are ready to come in for a year, 2 years, maybe even one semester, and use it as a jumping off point for the next level, if they even get to the college game in the first place. And it's fascinating because I think some coaches are comfortable with this. Some coaches are accustomed to players leaving early. They want the talent period, even if it's only for a semester or one season. They're ready to use that to the best of their, whatever their circumstances. And there's others that seem to be sort of reacting against it, almost cutting out a certain type of player. We were talking before we started recording here about this idea that college coaches are actually going to only want 4-year players. Now, to me, that's a little squishy because if you're a top program and you think you can put your kid in a situation to succeed and on the right platform, then maybe they turn into a 2-year player, right? If they're prospering where you're at. But I think we're seeing coaches and programs are trying to kind of figure out what their identity is in this new world where players have more options than ever at younger ages than ever before.
And let's make it very clear that when we talk to different college coaches about the recruiting process, all of them, the first thing they said is, look, it is a school-by-school, case-by-case basis. Some schools are okay with having players that are one and done. Other schools are either more concerned about the educational side or just deciding that they want 4-year players for team continuity. So this is not something that is going to be straight across the board. As one person said to me, recruiting is a free-for-all. And so it's kind of the same in how they approach this problem.
I think it's a little bit of a luxury if you can actually make a conscious decision like, yeah, we're only going to go 4-year guys, because most coaches I know at all levels, they want quality, period. They want quality at their disposal, and even if a future pro comes in and stays one semester, that future pro is lifting the level all around you. They're setting the example. They're setting the tone for everybody from 1 to 25 on your roster. And to me, whatever their plans are, if you can make a case for them that you can be part of their success for however long it is, then you do that. But we'll see. Again, every coach is different. Every program does have a culture.
So yeah, and it's an interesting distinction as well when you take the one and done. Everybody's heard that term, especially in college basketball. And the main reason that exists in college basketball is because there's actually a rule. It's actually an NBA rule which forces them to go to college or at least sit out for a year after high school, and the NFL has requirements as well as far as
2 years.
You can't 2 years.
You
You can't come straight.
Junior, yeah.
Right. So those are actually the best of the best who would go pro straight out of college or might choose to, but they have to go to college. And in soccer, they don't have to at all. And in fact, the absolute top of the top players are more and more being signed as homegrown players by MLS clubs. Some of them are even going, overseas and signing big contracts in Europe and elsewhere. And so these one and dones would be players who they're almost like the second kind of layer of those players who, they're not the players who have already gone pro. They are players who get the chance to go pro a little bit later. So college is already kind of, I don't want to say like taking the scraps, but they're already kind of getting the next layer of, top U.S. players.
And Quinn, just to add on to your point, is the fact of the matter is before this latest development, which I'll get to in a second, college was that bridge for players from 16, 17 who maybe had the opportunity to go pro, but still had some learning and some growing to do. But now that gap that college used to take up has really been filled by the USL Championship and the fact that many MLS teams have their teams in the United Soccer Leagues. And so the thing is now these kids have to decide, do they want to go the college route or the USL route? I know that you wanted to say something, Charles, but I just wanted to slot that in there.
And I urge, and if you guys are listening and interested in this topic, go. If you haven't listened to it already, episode 2 of our podcast, we dived into the college schedule reform effort that's being led by Maryland coach Sasha Sorovsky. It really is a key element here because I think we're seeing in general the evolution of the program is having an effect probably more negative, but a multi-layered effect on the college game. And that's a big reason why there's some leading figures in the NCAA game are trying to go to a year-round season or a 2-semester season to more closely resemble the professional schedule and the professional environment.
Yeah, when Eric Palmer Brown was at the University of Maryland, all the kids on the national team at the U20 level who were playing pro was telling him, look, you're in a 3 months condensed season. You're not playing year round. You need to be in a more professional setup. And so, like you said, Charles, by mimicking this setup, kids can feel that they are in a more pro environment, that they're getting touches year round. And so that way, this would be a good route. Some of the knock-on effects that I have heard, and I want to get your take on it too, is first of all, it's bolstered not only the foreign import market into U.S. college soccer, but that it has also caused there to be much more transfer students. Because if you get a player who is on their way to play and then all of a sudden they get a pro offer and they're no longer there, then a college coach has to fill a space in very minimal time. And so it's very tough to go recruit when it's only 2 or 3 months before the season. The best thing to do is you can get either a transfer student or you can go abroad and kind of recruit quicker than you could maybe a senior that you haven't had a chance to look at yet. The last thing I want to say is also thinking about this, it opens the door for maybe that second tier of player right under the blue chip prospects who might have been teetering on the brink of a coach's depth chart. And all of a sudden, you know what? They move up into that's somebody that we have to recruit. Charles?
Yeah, I think the message that we should really emphasize for parents that are listening, remember that as the professional game continues to advance, the question is I think you have to be really honest, and there's a lot of people in this industry that are whether they're coaches or TDs or recruiting aides, there's a lot of people that maybe you may not be able to get a really unvarnished message about your kid's level. You need to know where your kid is at. Do not gas yourself up. Do not let other people gas you up. The kids that are future pros, they're almost like another species that's kind of separating themselves from the rest of the elite soccer pack. If your kid's not at that level, if you want to get into a D1 program at some point or be in that game, you have got to get your kid into that class. Even if they're not there, even if they're, and in some cases the recruiting picture is better for a backup on a big DA program or an MLS academy than it is to star. And it may not always, you have to make an individual decision about what environment is best for your kid. Are they comfortable with a certain club that's maybe not as visible? Are they comfortable playing more? Or if you want to be seen at that level, you've got to be in that level. Even if you're not quite where those future pros are, understand that's a different species that's taking a separation.
Excellent point, Charles. Quinn, I know you have something that you want to say. We're going to ask to hold on to that, and we'll come back to you because first I want to hear from Player Maker. The SoccerWire podcast is brought to you by Player Maker, the ultimate performance product for soccer teams and players. Player Maker is already being used by the world's top Premier League clubs, championship college teams, and now available for the youth market on a subscription basis. The Player Maker system records every touch of the ball and every step, providing information for coaches and players such as total touches on the ball, right and left foot touches, possession times, distance covered, sprints, and passing completion, among many others. Player Maker data can help coaches at every level to plan their training sessions effectively. Every player receives feedback on their personal technical and physical training goals. For a demo of Player Maker, visit SoccerWire.com/PlayerMaker. Player Maker, fast track player development. Welcome back to the SoccerWire podcast. We're talking about the fact that more kids are deciding to turn pro before college and how that has kind of changed the soccer landscape as well as the way college coaches go about recruiting. And Quinn, you kind of had something that you wanted to say before we had to go to break about the way the DA has kind of affected what coaches are looking for in players.
Yeah, just before the break there, Charles was breaking down the kind of the youth landscape, and I was just thinking about, in the DA right now, you have MLS academies, and then you have most other clubs in the DA are not MLS academies. It's about 28 MLS academies, and I think 60 or 70 just youth clubs who are also in the DA. And I'm wondering, as more MLS academy players are going pro at younger ages, what does this mean for the elite boys players who are not kind of on that track? And will there be more scholarship opportunities for them? Just overall, what does kind of a big picture look like for those players?
And I think again, I want to try and keep things really parent-focused in this segment. And I know you guys have got out there. You've got a lot to do. You got a lot. If you have multiple kids, you have multiple games every weekend, training sessions to get to. But I urge all parents who are involved in this process to go not just to your kids' DA games or DA club games or whatever elite level they're at. Go to your local professional academy games. Catch at least one game a season to see what the level is. And in some cases, you can get a glimpse of it even in USL Championship. So people here in the DMV, go out to watch a Loudoun United game and watch a kid like Moses Nyman, right? He is now competing in USL Championship instead of where he would have been in a DA game a few years ago, right? Or maybe a college game once he gets a few years on. You need to see what those players look like and the level that they're competing at and what's around them. And again, even if I think people look at like success rates, right? How many players from Leo Messi's academy crop at Barcelona made it? And remember that the whole system is designed it's not to push all 18 of those kids to professional level. A lot of those kids are there simply to provide the stage, provide the match environment and the training environment for others to succeed. And it's sort of like the old thing about gambling, right? If you can't tell who the rube is at the card table, then you are that rube, right? So know where you stand and what the level is and what each kid on the field's purpose is. Because not every kid out there is going to make it or even get a look at as a pro, but maybe there's some coattails that you can ride to get to where you're trying to go, to get some educational funds, what have you.
And the bottom line is, at the end of the day, it's still only 0.00001% that's going to go professional. So for that reason, there are going to be kids in MLS academies who are still going to get looked, who are still going to go and play in college soccer. But I think, Charles, what you said in the last segment is so important to realize, is that even if you're not on an MLS team, but you're still playing in the DA, that's where the college coaches are going to be looking, because they're not only looking at those MLS kids, but they're looking at the kids that are competing with them on a daily basis. And I even had, one coach tell me is, look, we're not necessarily looking at the New York Red Bulls anymore because so many of those kids are going pro, but we are also looking at the BW Gachis. We're looking at the soccer. So just by being in that DA, you're getting that exposure you need. And also realizes that as each kid goes pro, that opens up another opportunity that you have to possibly get that scholarship, to possibly get recruited. At the same time, in the club level as well, it's about putting yourself in the right spots in order to get recruited, but know that the opportunities are kind of starting to open up as coaches kind of change the way that they go about recruiting.
Well, and you also have a lot of talk right now that MLS academies could eventually break away from the DA and just have their own league, which, for now it's really nice that clubs all around the country still get to play against, top professional MLS academies, but who knows how long that's actually going to last.
Yeah, I don't really love that MLS is breaking away. I know this is a quick tangent, but I'll quickly come right back. Because the fact of the matter is there are a lot of great players who just don't live in MLS markets, who may not be able or willing to move to an MLS market. So I don't think that that's the best thing for U.S. soccer. I think if that does happen, Quinn, is that, first of all, the college coaches are now going to have to go to the MLS events to get those players who are in the 0.999% who's not going to go pro. But they're also going to continue to focus on the DA because they know that outside of MLS, that is still the top level of great players who play for the Soccers in Illinois who play for all those amazing academies out in California, or who play for Solar, who won the Development Academy Championship with all those MLS teams. So I still think that those coaches are going to have to spend time in both the DA and MLS markets if that happens. But the other thing I want to say, and I waited for you to start to chime in just so I could interrupt you, Charles, but the other thing I want to say about that is that also you talk about, well, where is college soccer kind of going in the landscape, especially with the fact that there's so much education online, and also not only the fact that you can get your education in less traditional ways now, but also in the fact that culturally it is more acceptable for a kid to become a professional soccer player rather than go to college right away. 10 years ago, let alone 20 years ago, that was unacceptable. Oh, you want to become a soccer player? What are you doing with your life? Now it's like, hey, you know what? That's great. Go for it. And so now that it's more culturally acceptable, I see the pyramid kind of switching in which the USL supplants college, and college drops a level and is there for those kids that either just want to play in college or are very good and have the tools, but just not quite ready yet to make the jump either to USL or MLS. Now I'll let you talk, Charles.
Yeah, I think we have to recognize that the college system has to evolve. Right now, the college system is almost frozen in amber. It's from the timekeeping to the schedule to the mentality of a lot of the athletic directors, the weird place that it occupies. It's a tough spot. And understand that if you or your kid are chasing that, that may be there for you. But I think inevitably the decline, the more it gets detached from the professional landscape, that's going to fuel the overall decline, and that's eventually going to lead to fewer programs. I mean, we're seeing that trend slowly but surely. The men's D1 scholarship programs are dwindling. In some cases, the amount of money that's put out there, it's already a pretty low cap in terms of how much money a D1 program can give out, and they're already spreading out half scholarships across the squad, right? So in a sense, we can talk about more opportunities trickling down as kids go pro earlier, but the pot that's still a stationary, sort of stagnating pot of money and relevance.
Based off that, I have two quick questions. I want to do kind of a rapid fire question for both Charles and Marc here.
Let's go.
There are currently 206 NCAA Division I men's soccer programs. 10 years from now, do you think there will be less than 200?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Interesting. And 20 years from now, do you think there'll be even less than that?
I would say that my opinionated answer on this is that hopefully that will not be the case, because the powers that be will institute come this spring, the season, the year-round season will be put into effect at D1, and then the rest of the college game will follow suit. The women's game will follow suit. Everybody will recognize that this is the move that needs to happen, and that bleeding and that kind of stagnation can stop.
And that move is not only better just for soccer and the product on the field, but it's also better for the kids as student athletes in terms of their ability to go to class and have more time on campus and more ability to study and other issues like that.
Right. And so the other question I guess I have from there is that, so if I am a 16, 17-year-old, teenage soccer player who's in a elite academy, whether it's DA, just in the DA, or whether I'm actually in an MLS academy, and maybe I haven't signed a homegrown contract as a 15, 16-year-old, but I'm in that next tier, and I have the opportunity to play in the USL as a professional immediately, or wait and then go play college soccer as a kind of blue chip prospect. To me, when I think about it, what sounds more appealing? Wait until I'm 18 and eventually go off and play college, or immediately go pro, make $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 playing in the USL, and you can also get an education with these pro leagues are, putting education, even higher education, with online and actual real classrooms at their academies. To have that opportunity, I think is, more and more becoming something that's really enticing.
Well, I'd say let's not forget that until you're 18 or finish your senior year of high school, you can play in the USL on an academy contract and still keep your NCAA eligibility. So that would be my first thing. If you're not being fast-tracked to your Major League Soccer team or you're not going abroad, use that so that you have all avenues open to you. But then when it comes time to make a choice, you have to think, am I a $40,000 or $50,000 player for the next 10 years? Or is there a ceiling? Is there a higher mountain for me to climb? And what's going to get me there quicker? Is it this USL route, which in some cases it might be, or is it the college route, which in some cases it might be? And the thing I want to say is, look, we're sitting here talking about where college is and the fact that it might be sinking a little bit, but let's make it clear. College still has a very distinct and important part to play in terms of the soccer landscape in America. Let's not shy away from the fact that there are tremendous A-licensed coaches and assistant coaches who work their butt off 15 to 20 hours a day for their programs. There are amazing players who either didn't get their chances in the academies or just haven't fully developed yet in the college game. And this is a wonderful opportunity to not only become a better player, but to become a more educated person and just a better and more holistic person overall in college. So I think that unless you are absolutely certain or unless you feel that there's a shot for you to go all the way, college is still a wonderful opportunity. When we talk about the fact that it's dwindling and everything, we're still focused on that 0.001%. And we're also very interested in how do coaches look at that 0.001% and then that 0.002 and 0.003% who's actually making the decision of whether to go the college route or the pro route, and how do they respond to that. And I'll just leave it at, there was one coach who told me it's a case-by-case basis. You vet them, you ask the questions, you see where their mind's at, and then you make an educated decision. Charles and Quinn, anything before we close this out?
No, I think that puts a pretty good bow on it.
Definitely. That was a great summary, Mark.
Oh, thank you guys so much. That is, let's put it on record, the first compliment I have ever gotten. I am so excited. C4 Dynamite. All right, we are going to step aside, and when we return, we will be joined by producer and editor extraordinaire, Bridget Baker, who will join us to tell us all about the most recent featured players on SoccerWire. SoccerWire is the place for prospective recruits to list themselves and promote their profile to thousands of daily readers, including college coaches, scouts, and more. All recruits can list themselves for life for a small one-time fee. Already committed? Congratulations! All commitments can be reported for free and are included in our nationwide soccer recruiting and tournament wire to over 65,000 people each Thursday. Visit SoccerWire.com to create your player profile today. Welcome back to the weekly SoccerWire podcast. I'm joined now by producer Bridget Baker, who is here to tell us all about the most recent featured players on SoccerWire.
Thanks, Mark. Really excited. We had 4 new featured players come in this week on SoccerWire.com. Leading it off is Nicole Rigaud, a defender and midfielder for FC Copa. I'm going to be graduating with the class of 2021. Summer Jones, a defender and forward for Penn Express FC.
Love that versatility.
Will be graduating the class of 2024. A couple of 2021 classes to end this here is Timothy Gordonier, a forward midfielder for Richmond United playing in the Development Academy, and Lauren Piasecki, a midfielder and defender for Quick Strike FC. Those player profiles and highlights videos of each player can be found on SoccerWire.com.
Thank you, Bridget, and we are rooting for you four, as well as everyone who is looking to take the next step, not only in their soccer careers, but their academic ones as well. That will do it for this week's edition of the SoccerWire podcast. For coverage of everything youth soccer, be sure to check SoccerWire.com, your premier location for the best coverage of the youth game. If there's something we missed or a topic you would like discussed, hit us up on Twitter @TheSoccerWire or hop over to SoccerWire.com and click on the Contact Us link on the bottom of any page. Every Thursday, we put out our national soccer recruiting and tournament wire, and for those of you in the Mid-Atlantic or Tri-State regions, we send twice weekly local news roundups. Just click on the newsletter link on SoccerWire.com to get the best of SoccerWire in your inbox. Next week, we'll be discussing the quote-unquote alphabet soup of the youth soccer environment on our special Thanksgiving week edition of the SoccerWire podcast. And a happy Thanksgiving week and Thanksgiving to you, Bridget, Charles, and Quinn, and everyone listening at home. We hope that you have a wonderful holiday and that you have a lot to be thankful for. We are certainly thankful for you here at SoccerWire. One last time, for Bridget Baker, Quinn Casteel, and Charles Boehm, I'm Marc Serber saying thank you for joining us on the SoccerWire podcast.